Hey there guys, and welcome back. This is episode 29 in my series 100 casts, in which I shoutcast over 100 games of League of Legends sent in to me by fans and friends. If you'd like your replay to be featured on the channel, check the description and you can figure out how to do that down there. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into this, and I'll see you again at the end of the video. Alrighty, let's get into this shoutcast then. This one is a fairly recent one I was given, actually. I believe it's a high-level normals, but the reason why I'm using a more recent replay rather than one of the ones that I had in my backlog of replays to get done is that, as I said in a previous announcement video, because of the recent patch, a lot of my replays got deleted. I can't use them anymore because they have so many bugs. Things from the minimap simply not showing up, fog of war not working, and thus the entire map just being shrouded in darkness like there's a constant nocturne ult going on. Minions showing up. Every single melee minion showed up as a super minion. It loaded in the wrong model and they were all super minions rather than normal minions, which I think was just probably the most hilarious bug I've ever seen. And of course, just a few bug splats here and there where sometimes the game wouldn't start, sometimes the game would load and play for 10 minutes and then bug splats, sometimes it would play for 20 minutes. It's every single replay seemed to have its own unique bug, and so if you sent me in a replay and it's from a few weeks ago and I still haven't gotten around to it, that might be the reason, because it might simply be corrupted and I can't use it. If that's the case, I would love to have another replay from you. Please send me an email reminding me about it. I'll check and see if you're one of the ones that was one of the corrupted files, and if so, I would gladly take another replay from you and gladly shoutcast over that. And yeah, because I don't want anybody to be left behind. I don't want anybody who really wants one of the replays shoutcasted over to not have that opportunity. So please bug me, get in touch with me. My email will be in the description. Send me an email there. And let's get into the shoutcast properly, though, now that I've gotten that out of the way. Let's get into some of the matchups. As we see in the middle lane, it's an Annie on purple team versus a Zed on blue team. Now, that matchup, in the laning phase at least, I want to give over to Annie because she has really long-range auto attacks and the ability to harass out with the low mana cost Q that she can cast on a fairly low cooldown as well. As we see down in the bottom lane, Morgana walking up towards the enemy bottom lane. She does land the binding onto Caitlyn, but takes a lot of harass for doing so. Draven didn't really follow her up, and really couldn't follow her up. There were too many minions on blue side, and she went a bit too far, so perhaps taking on a bit more than she could really handle by herself, Morgana takes an unfavorable trade in her direction, but it wasn't anything more serious than that, and purple team, I'm sure, can recover. As over in the middle lane, it does seem like Annie is beginning to take the advantage there already at just before 3 minutes into the game. Zed is already down to about 2/3 of his health bar, and he is holding even in CS, to be fair. However, as I said, we're only about 3 minutes into the game, so CS so far is not really that accurate of a reading of how someone is doing. As Janna's going aggressive onto the Morgana here, she's taken quite low, does manage to land a binding in return though, and now Caitlyn's in a bit of trouble, caught out by the Draven, forced to pop flash and heal, but Draven's going to keep following those bouncing axes relentlessly, getting first blood for himself, as in middle lane, the Zed has hit level 3 and goes in onto the Annie, forcing her flash away. Elise has roamed down out of the river. Dark Binding hits one of her spiderlings instead of her. She gets exhausted as she pounces in. The immediate exhaust mitigating quite a lot of her damage. Draven now flashing away and popping heal as well. She gets bound under the tower. Wonderful Dark Binding from Morgana. Gonna be saving Draven's life and, in fact, getting him another kill and double buffs. Draven picking up 2 kills and an early double buffs down in bottom lane. This match has gotten off to an explosive start, and I'm sure that Draven's going to be happy with that. Around 4 minutes into the game, already 2 kills up and able to pick up a pickaxe for himself down there. And speaking of builds, Riven has bought a red elixir first, and it looks like she's planning to go aggressive in this lane. She's traded the Gnar down to below half health. Still didn't pop it yet, though, as actually it looks like Draven undid the purchase of the pickaxe and instead is going for more of an early game lane build. He's bought 3 Doran's blades and a pair of boots, as well as a few health potions there, so he's looking to really secure that early lead that he's already certainly got an edge built up on with those 2 kills that he got. And I'd like to swap back over to the middle lane where it looks like we have a bit of action going on. Zed going in onto the Annie, whose flash was down from earlier, and Baphomet going to be picking up an easy kill there onto the enemy mid laner, killing off the Annie, making good use of his shadow to swap right into her face after slowing her down and just ensuring that she does not escape. Elise and Zed now pushing the minions under the tower. It's always a good idea if the enemy laner goes down and you, the jungler, are nearby and you don't have anything else really important to do, to push up that lane with your laner and get it under the tower as quickly as you can, so that the enemy laner who just died and needs to walk all the way back to lane misses as much CS as possible, because it's all about denying gold and getting gold advantage, and you can do that by getting gold for yourself or by denying gold on the enemy. Now down in bottom lane, Draven's trying to make good use of that double buff that he has. The red buff slowing up the Caitlyn, doing a bunch of extra true damage, and he also lands a few auto attacks bouncing off of the back of Janna, bringing her down to about a quarter health. Both Caitlyn and Janna down to about quarter health as Riven going aggressive onto the Gnar, but he manages to dodge out both the second and the third proc of Broken Wings and takes barely any damage while trading some onto her himself and actually coming out ahead there. The Riven still has yet to pop her Fortitude potion, so she still has that potential burst of damage that Gnar needs to account for in all of these trades. That could surprise him if he doesn't realize the strategy that she's trying to go there. Looks like Gnar going to be pushing in onto the Riven with repeated uses of that boomerang. At least flashing forward, throwing out the cocoon onto Annie. Zed, though, going in with Deathmark, is a full 2 levels above his opponent in middle lane. Has ult while she still does not, and is able to take her out under tower. Vi does show up for the cleanup crew and kills off the spider, squishing her under her fists. And that is going to be a kill for each jungler, Elise picking up the kill onto Annie, and Vi picking up the kill onto Elise. Up in top lane, it looks like Riven's red pot start is not quite working out for her, perhaps as planned. She's forced to go to base now. She's quite low on health, trying to base the Gnar, interrupting her occasionally with thrown boomerangs. Looks like she's going to have to give it at least 3 good tries before she's going to be allowed to actually go back to base. As down in bottom lane, Draven's making good use of his lead, pushing the Caitlyn under tower over and over again, trying to deny her as much CS as he can, as well as get some early damage onto that turret. Vi has come down, perhaps going to be going for a tower dive here. She does in fact have her ulti up, so they could very possibly pull one off, especially considering that Draven has such a hefty lead on his opponent down there. Morgana can land a good binding under the tower. They could perhaps go for it. I apologize for this lag spike here, by the way. As in middle lane, it looks like Zed and Elise are going to be going after this poor defenseless little girl again, killing off Annie for the 3rd time, giving Zed the kill that time, and he's got himself a Brutalizer as well as a Doran's Blade. Really doing a lot of damage already, and just has turned that lane around from back where it was in the beginning of the match when Annie was pushing him under tower and harassing him so low. He now has certainly turned the lane around, has over a 10 CS lead, as well as 2 kills up on the enemy Annie, who's at 0-3. Caitlyn going quite low, forced to pop her heal as Draven chases under the tower, relentlessly going at her with those axes. Nice long-range binding landing from Morgana. She wanders in to drop the Tormented Soil as well, just getting those Spell Thieves procs. As Draven is still pushing up the lane, and it's just not going well for bottom lane down here for blue team. Vi finds Elise trying to invade into her jungle, chases after her with Vault Breaker, but gets hit by the cocoon, and Elise simply walks away. And it looks like we have a bit of a break in the action, perhaps. So I'm going to head back to talking about builds. It looks like both Gnar and Riven are going for early damage in the top lane. Riven usually does that. I have yet to see a Riven who builds tanky items first. I don't think that's really the correct way to go about building Riven, but Gnar does in fact have the option of building pure tank, building off tank, building bruiser, as we see Zed diving in onto the Andy under the tower again. Looks like the death mark wasn't quite enough damage to finish her off, though, as we swap up to top lane where Gnar is now going at it with the enemy. Riven brings her down very low. She flashes away, but there was already an auto attack in flight, and that auto attack follows her through the flash and takes her out in the other brush. As now Vi is trying to bring back Annie into some form of relevance in this match, trying her best to help her out and bring her back into this game. She's level 5 to the enemy Zed's level 7, but she just doesn't have enough pressure in this middle lane to really help her enough to bring her all the way back here, as it looks like Elise and Zed might be trying for the first turret of the game here in the middle lane. Really zoning this Annie away. She has hit level 6, thankfully, here, so she can find her bare Tibbers if necessary, but Zed is level 8, still sustaining that 2-level advantage on her as the middle lane goes down. First turret of the game going over to blue team, who have accrued for themselves only about a 400 gold lead, actually, since they do have a lead in kills, but Draven, being Draven, has that passive running, and thus is able to get quite a lot of gold from the kills that he picks up, and as well as the fact that he has a huge farm lead. So really, purple team's relying on their bottom lane to carry them through this match at this point. Though they are only 10 minutes in, a lot can change between now and the end of the match. We're only 10 minutes in, guys. But still, it looks like Draven's set himself up to be the late game carry for purple team, whereas Zed has set himself up to be the guy who can delete that Draven from the map. Well, we have a bit of a break in the action. Actually, we don't at all, as Riven is going in onto the Gnar, going to stun him up with Key Strike. She pops her ulti, but doesn't continue chasing as he hops away under the tower. Also popped the Fortitude pot that she had been saving up until now. That's a lot burned, and Gnar didn't even go down. She's going in with Broken Wings again while the ulti is still running, trying to get the kill. The ulti runs out, though, and now she's being chased away. Gnar takes her down. That Phage really paying off with the movement speed burst that he gets from those auto attacks, as in the middle lane, Vi is once again there, still trying to get this Annie back in the game, and does manage to get her a kill. Nice black shield from the Morgana, going to be completely halting that Janna tornado in its tracks. The Draven stand aside, knocks Caitlyn into the Dark Binding. That was wonderful synergy from purple team down in the bottom lane. I want to choose to believe that that was on purpose, because if it was, that is just wonderful. Draven knocking the enemy AD carry right into the hitbox of Dark Binding and binding her up underneath the tower and getting another kill for himself. Draven at 3-0, and they pick up the bottom lane tower to boot, evening up the tower score and gaining a gold lead for purple team, who are at 16.7k to 15.3k on the board there. About 1,000 or a little bit more than 1,000 gold lead for purple team. Dragon still, though, has not yet been contested, and while I have a moment, I would like to talk about Dragon. I think that purple team has quite a good Dragon team. They admittedly do not have the teleport that blue team does. Gnar has gone teleport, whereas Riven has gone ignite. Really went for a very aggressive lane up in top lane, going both ignite and the fortitude pot start, which is something you don't see very often anymore, though it is still perfectly viable. It's just not quite as strong as it used to be ever since they upped the cost of fortitude pot, but it's still perfectly possible. You can certainly do it, as Zed has found Annie trying to do the Wraith Camp here, just trying to get some gold back for herself. He ults over the wall after, and the ignite as well as the pop from Deathmark going to secure that kill, while he swaps back to his original shadow to simply say goodbye to Vi and goodbye to any chance of a counterattack. While up in top lane, Gnar gets that speed boost from his passive on the W, and with that plus the speed boost on the Phage is going to be getting a killing spree for himself, really coming out ahead in this top lane against Riven, as now Vi might be in trouble. Goes back in, gets exhausted though by the Janna, who has roamed up from bottom lane and is helping out the Zed. Nearly saves his life with a shield there, but is not going to be quite enough, as the get dunked from Vi's ulti is going to be the last thing that Zed hears before going down. And that's Vi picking up a kill in mid lane. Janna cleaning up the kill right afterwards, because Vi did go down to about 50 health, just turning around and trying to get that kill. And so Janna's able to pick it up, but I don't know if that's really worth it, since I believe that was a shutdown going over to Vi. Or was he shut down earlier? I don't quite recall. As we see Tibbers being very nice and tanking up the blue buff so that Annie can pick it up for herself. And thus getting the blue buff, the cooldown reduction, will allow her to get to find Tibbers again much more quickly later on when she needs him to help fight these enemies for her. Draven landing one or two auto attacks onto the Elise, brings her down very low, throws out the ult after she gets bound up. Morgana's ult comes down as well. That is 2 kills so far for Draven. Can he get the third? The exhaust goes onto Zed to prevent so much of the damage that would have come through onto the Deathmark. He nearly goes down, and now Morgana and Draven are just relentlessly pushing forward. Dark Binding landing before he can swap away to his shadow. Draven flashes forward to take advantage of it and is dominating. Unofficial triple kill in the middle lane for the Morgana and the Draven, as up in top lane, Gnar and Riven are at it again, but Vi has joined the party. Vi has the red buff. Can she land the slow onto Gnar to slow him up? He throws out the boomerang to slow down the Riven. Key Strike doesn't quite land, but Vault Breaker does. Gnar, though, has flash up, flashes over into the Tri-Brush. Riven going under the tower, tanks it for a bit, and then shield dashes away. Gnar still alive, still fighting this. There are two people coming at him. He has the ward in the Tri-Brush. He goes down, eventually shut down by the Vi. However, Elise has been given time to come up to the top lane now. Gnar gets the kill onto Riven as she goes down to the tower, trying to escape up towards the top of the lane. And Elise chases down the Vi and gets that kill with the Spider Bite execute in her spider form. Draven and Morgana, though, have just been still going at it in the mid lane, landing auto attacks now onto the secondary turret. The Zed going in, dodges out the binding, thankfully, or else that might have proved his doom against this incredibly strong Draven. As Caitlyn down in bottom lane, underestimating the Annie, does get taken out there in the 1v1, as Elise has shown up mid and is going to finish off the Morgana after Draven goes down to the Janna and Zed. And I really apologize for these FPS spikes. I don't understand where they're coming from. I'm gonna have to take a look at my fraps again. I thought I had fixed this issue, but I guess I haven't. As now Zed is in a 1v1 with the Vi. The Vi, having built an Elder Lizard and a Phage, has a lot of damage and is able to take him out all by herself. Not all by herself, though. The Annie falls down in bottom lane. Gnar and Elise picking up that easy kill. She was a bit overextended and a bit low on health. As Elise now spots out the pink ward in the Tri-Brush down in bottom lane. It's going to be taking that out, while Vi is wandering over towards the Dragon Pit, finds a pink ward of her own, or rather of the enemy's, and takes that out. And I was, a while ago, going to talk about dragon fights before I got interrupted, but it looks like that's going to have to wait again as Gnar and Riven are dancing around near each other up top. Doesn't seem like anything's happened yet, though, as Elise is going after this red buff for herself. Going to pick that up. The spirit of the Spectral Wraith that she has, giving her some nice sustain in the jungle. So she's able to stay at a decent enough health for this impending dragon fight, it seems like. As Zed's going right in onto the Draven, trying to take him out, but Annie shows up in time to dissuade him from continuing to chase, and Draven's just going to lose about a third of his health bar for that, and Zed's ulti is now down, so it looks like Purple Team might have an opportune moment to go after Dragon here. Morgana really spending a lot to get that pink ward. Goes down very low, pops the ulti onto the Elise. Does not stun in time to save her life, as now Elise is on a rampage, being chased after by the Vi, though the Vi has a lot of damage from the Phage and the Elder Lizard that she's built. While on the other side of the fight, Draven is 1v1ing the enemy AD carry, and being as far ahead as he was, managed to come out ahead in that matchup, as Vi now finds a low health Zed trying to run away. Chases after him with Vault Breaker, and with the help of Annie's stun, takes that kill. And that's a double kill going over to Vi, and another kill going to Draven, who already has an Infinity Edge and only 17.5 minutes into the game, as well as a Zeal. That's certainly something not to be forgotten. And up in top lane, Gnar has been split pushing this whole time, so at least Blue Team has that. But Purple Team did just secure a dragon for themselves, as well as a 4,000 gold and a 1 kill advantage up there on the scoreboard. Anyways. I suppose talking about dragon fights would be a bit irrelevant now that Dragon is dead, but I can talk about builds while I have a moment. And it looks like Gnar is going for a fairly high DPS build. He's built a Trinity Force already. As I said, Gnar is a fairly new champion, and I haven't had all that much time to actually play him, so I'm not sure of what my favorite build is or what the most optimal build is, and if those will be the same thing or not. Cocoon getting entirely negated by a very well-timed Black Shield there, but Black Shield is down, and Zed takes that as the sign to go in. The Ignite and Deathmark going to be enough to take out the Draven. Vi has shown up, though, so Elise might be in a bit of trouble. She has a lot of damage. She's finished off a Sheen as well. The Elise is going to go down here. Vi picking up that kill, then following up with the Assault and Battery onto Zed, then immediately followed up by a Dark Binding from Morgana. However, Janna is here to save the Zed's life with Monsoon. And that is going to be 1 kill overall, but a lot, well, actually 2, because the Draven did go down at the beginning of that to the Zed. And that is going to be 2 kills overall, but a lot of spells burned. Summoner spells, ultimates, all around, all over the board were burned. Vi ults, Zed ults, just many, many different ults. It was the battle of the ults. Annie wandering up towards top lane, does find Gnar in the jungle, drops Tibbers onto him to stun him up. He goes down very low. He has built full damage, so he's very squishy here. He hops over into the wall with Baron, though, and that's going to be his life saved, most likely. I don't really see the enemies catching up to him. He throws out a boomerang just in case to slow them down. It takes a lot of health, but manages to escape, thankfully. And that's actually an Ignite burned, I believe, from Annie. Is Annie? Yeah, Annie's the one running Ignite out of those two, and that is an Ignite burn from Annie for nothing, as Zed now going in onto the Annie doesn't care about Tibbers and doesn't care about Morgana, but perhaps he should. Gets stunned up by the Morgana ult, then bound immediately, and Tibbers swinging one of his giant bear paws is going to be killing him off. Perhaps he should have paid a bit more regard to the fact that Tibbers was still wandering around and that Morgana was standing right there next to her, and so he couldn't quite finish off the kill onto Annie. Bit off a bit more than he could chew and goes down, giving up the gold over to Annie and over to Tibbers. Now Lisa's shown up top. I'm going to be pushing out these minions with Gnar, and I would like to actually take some time to talk about Gnar's build, since Gnar is a new champion, and what he builds is interesting in and of itself, simply because of that. So he has a Trinity Force, and now he's picked up a Giant's Belt as well as Ninja Tabby. So it looks like he's going for a Bruiser build, an off-tank Bruiser build. So I don't know exactly what he's going to turn the Giant's Belt into. There's a lot of things you can make with that. But could be... The enemy team doesn't have very much magic damage. Simply the magic damage coming out of Annie is a threat. Though Morgana has actually finished off a Zhonya's Hourglass. So she's going to be doing some decent damage herself as well. So perhaps he's going to be going for that magic resistance. However, Zed is going in onto the Draven here, bringing him down quite low, wants that red buff for himself, and gets the red buff. As up in top lane, Elise is being chased by Riven. The ult not going to be enough damage to bring her down, as the Elise barely gets away with any of her health left. Gnar now in a 1v2 though, and Elise can't really help out. She's way too low on health. She'd go down to one Vault Breaker. Comes in to throw out the spider, but gets a bit too close as Assault and Battery chases after her immediately. And then Gnar goes down just afterwards, giving the shutdown gold over to Morgana. First kill of the game for that support, which is a good thing, I suppose. As now Zed is chasing after Annie, has the red buff, lands the slow onto her, takes a bunch of damage from Incinerate and Disintegrate. And he then goes into Zhonya's to delay the inevitable. Does go down in the end, but perhaps it was worth it. As now Morgana has found the Zed. He does swap over the wall, though, immediately after coming out of that stun. Gets away with barely any health left. Draven ulti not going to be doing quite enough damage to bring him down. And he manages to escape, getting a kill for himself without having to trade anything back. So, certainly worth it for Zed, bringing him closer and closer to his late game build. However, Draven is getting closer and closer to that quicker and quicker. He's managed to pick up the highest creep score in the game at 145. As in the middle lane, I'm interrupted by the Morgana getting engaged on by the enemy team. Wonderful black shield there, going to prevent the stun coming out from Elise, but I don't think it's going to be enough to save her life, as there are many, many more members on her. And she gets killed off in the end by Zed, getting a killing spree up to him. And it looks like Purple Team are going to be pushing up the middle lane with that man advantage on the map. Actually, they're going to be going for Baron buff. The Gnar does actually do Baron quite quickly with the magic damage percentage damage that he has on his W in his ranged form. He doesn't do it quite as quickly when he's forced to transform into Mega Gnar, but in that form he can at least be a decent tank for the damage. And Elise does the Baron quickly as well with the percentage damage in both of her forms. So they are able to take it out fairly quickly. The Caitlyn actually getting the final auto attack there, but they are caught out by the red team. Can they do anything about this? The Zed gets the shutdown onto Vi, and my FPS is going crazy. I'm sorry about this. Draven somehow gets the kill onto Caitlyn. I'm not quite sure because I can't entirely see what's going on, as Gnar now is being chased out by Tibbers and friends. And it looks like he's going to be able to manage to get back to base. And red team picks up a kill for themselves, trades a kill back, though. Actually picks up 2 kills for themselves. And that is a 2 for 1 in terms of kills, but blue team picked up the Baron, so I really think that blue team came out ahead there. If not in gold overall, at least in artificial gold while they have the Baron buff running, because it is, in terms of stats, worth quite a bit of gold. Gnar going in after the Draven and the Morgana is fairly tanky and has enough damage to take out the Draven, so is going after them, forces out the Morgana ulti, and then simply backs away. As up in top lane, we see that Riven and Annie have been split pushing. They are going after the second tier turret in top lane after already taking out the first. Gnar has shown up, doesn't want his turrets to go down. Ace in the hole coming out. That gets blocked by Riven. Riven now trying to get away with Broken Wings. Zed choosing to ult in onto the Annie. Annie uses Zhonya's to avoid the death mark, but I don't think it's going to be enough prevention as the kill actually goes over to Janna there. Zed now on the Riven does a bunch of damage to her. She's quite low on health. Broken Wings might be enough to help her escape, but Zed has a shadow up and swaps forward to it, taking her out with the Shadow Slash and a few shurikens. And that is Zed getting one kill and Janna getting another. And the split push kind of went a little bit wrong for purple team there. And there are multiple members of blue team still wearing Baron buffs, and they have the man advantage on the map. They could certainly try and go for a push here. Some pinks coming out in top lane, they might want to go for that, as we see Draven picking up the red buff. And just a bit of a quiet moment on the map here as jungle camps are cleared, and people just aren't really choosing to engage in each other. A pink ward is discovered by Janna. She's going after that, as Gnar's just throwing out a few boomerangs to dissuade the enemy team from coming to stop her. And we see Elise picking up the blue buff. While I have a moment, I would like to talk about some of the builds. Annie has gone for a typical Annie pick up the Rod of Ages, though I believe she picked that up after the Zhonya's Hourglass because Zed was being so effective as a bully in lane that she just needed that armor to be able to survive the lane, and so it's a fairly late Rod of Ages, and it's going to take a good amount longer to roll up to the point where it's going to be really, really cost effective later on in the match. But she has at least managed to pick it up at this point, and so it's at least going to start to roll, and the longer the game goes, the better it's going to get for her, as Zed has discovered Riven in the enemy jungle, actually. He's pretty far deep in there, as he's chasing after her past the tower, flashes forward, really wants this kill. The Shuriken not going to be enough damage to take her out. She goes into ulti and casts the second activation as well, gets killed by the Zed under tower. Zed's perseverance does pay off, at least in that regard, but she picks up the shutdown with her ulti and ignite after going down, and so she's going to get the 500 gold. He's only going to get 300, so I believe that's worth it for Riven, as in middle lane, Morgana lands a nice dark binding onto Gnar after the Annie flashes forward in Tibbers, and that is 2 kills going to Morgana so far. Elise is in trouble as well, being chased out by Draven with a red buff. Does stun up the Draven, but doesn't stun up the Annie, who stuns her. And that is Elise going down in the end to Annie as well, and red team gets a 3-for-0 trade in the middle lane and a 1-for-1 trade down in bottom. And with that, they're going to be pushing up the mid lane. Vi has finished off her Trinity Force, and so is going to be doing quite a bit of damage to these towers, not to mention the fact that Draven has a Bloodthirster and an Infinity. That's just utter destruction for turrets and inhibitors and champions and everything. So he's certainly going to be able to take those down with with ease whenever he's allowed to. And so blue team's job is to not allow him to. Ace in the hole coming out into Morgana, but she uses Zhonya's to dodge it out. However, I don't think that's going to be enough, and she gets taken out by the Zed auto attack immediately afterwards, foiling the Caitlyn from picking up the kill at least, but I don't know if it's much better that it went to Zed, who has certainly been having a bit of an impact on this game for his team, trying his level best to really do his best job that he can to assassinate the enemy team and make it a lot easier for his team to deal with them. The Vi gets caught out by the Elise in the enemy jungle, now being attacked by Caitlyn as well as Gnar. Goes in with a Sultan battery onto Elise, trying